Welcome back to the IU427 garage, everybody. I am going to work on the King's Cobra today, and I believe what I'm going to work on are the rear calipers. I've got some caliper paint, some silver caliper paint, and I'm going to clean up the calipers. I'm going to take off all the rubber boots and stuff. I'm going to spray those with some silver caliper paint and get everything put together. Hopefully even bleed the brakes today. We'll see. If you remember, this is what we got. We had the Factory 5 11.5 inch brakes on the back, but they would not clear these Team 3 15 inch wheels. So we elected to put the earlier Mustang GT style rear brakes on, which are 10.5 inch in diameter. So we've got some brand new rotors. These are some brackets and calipers that I had upstairs. I stored them in the box, and so that's why you see all this dirt and stuff on it, because there is still brake fluid, you know, in the caliper. So with a banjo bolt and what have you disconnected, you know, some of that fluid leaks out. Now I do store these in plastic bags when I put them in the boxes. So these were in some boxes from some newer calipers that I had bought for, I don't know, probably my own car or Michael's car, and those came powder coated. So I just reused the same boxes and the bags that were inside that the calipers were packed in. So that's a good way to store them, because it keeps all of the rubber parts soft and supple, so they don't just disintegrate from, you know, dry conditions. So we're gonna go around to the other side of the car. I've got that one pulled apart, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take both of them and both brackets, and I'm going to go ahead and spray them down with some brakes part clean. Easy for me to say. I'm going to spray these down with some brake parts cleaner and get all of the residue off them. It'll take some of the paint off as well, but it'll give me a chance to prep them. And then any spot that I see that needs a little more attention, I'll hit those with a scuff pad, and then we'll go ahead and get these ready to paint. Now I don't know, on this one I may just go ahead and paint the spring, because honestly it'll probably make it look nicer. But we'll mask off all the areas on the caliper, like here where the piston goes in. This bracket, this silver bracket that retains the pad springs, that'll get pulled out, and then we'll go ahead and hit these with paint. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually hook up the brake lines to it, bleed the brakes, and any spots I need to touch up, then I'll pull the caliper back off of the bracket and just touch them up, and then they'll go on for the final time. So let me go ahead. I'll get these all disassembled, and I'll probably bring you back tomorrow when I'm getting ready to shoot some paint on them. All right, everybody, next day. Not ideal conditions today, because it's not too warm outside. I think our high today is only going to be about 65 degrees. But we're going to do multiple light coats on these. Now I've still got to give this one caliper a little bit more attention, because there is some surface rust underneath what was the paint. And so we're gonna scrub that a little bit and try to get down to bare metal there. But you can see we have all the loose paint, and this was caliper paint before, so it sticks really good. But a little brake clean, and I just buy the least expensive stuff from the local Walmart. And stainless steel brush, and we got them pretty clean, so they're smooth now. There's no flaking paint, and like I said, I'll hit this with some steel wool or sandpaper and try to get as much of that surface rust off as I can to prep it for paint. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to shoot these with the caliper paint. And after I'm done shooting them, I'll let them sit between each coats until it is sufficiently dry. And then once all the coats are on, I'll take my heat gun, and I just want to like superheat the surface of the metal without disturbing the paint. So it's a tough balance to do that. You can also stick them in the oven. But what I'm afraid of is if I take these in the house and stick them in the wife's oven, that any of the residual brake fluid that's in them might kind of boil out, and then it'll get on the paint and ruin it anyway. So we just want to get them warm enough so that the paint cures. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get those set up to spray paint, and I'll bring you back once I got a couple coats of paint on them. I'm probably gonna do one more coat on each piece, but for the most part, I think I got all of the areas where it was hard to get. And that's why you really wanna do light coats. You don't want to just douse these things in paint, because this stuff is, well, it's really thin and kind of runny, you know, like automotive paint is. And so if you put too much on, you're going to get drips. And so what I've found is that I spray at about, 14 inches or so from the part, and then just do a light dusting, and then turn. I've got, everything on a piece of cardboard, and I'm turning it each way on the cardboard. So each 4 sides, before I pick the pieces up and turn them over. So I'll let these probably dry overnight, and then I'm going to check for any holidays over each of the pieces probably tomorrow, and then I'll determine how much more attention I need to give the paint, and then I'll probably hit them with the heat gun. And I got to read the instructions on the paint can, because depending on the manufacturer of the paint, sometimes they will tell you to put heat to it, sometimes they won't. So I'm going to check, I'm going to read the instructions on there and make sure that that's the way they want it done. And then I'll hit it with the heat gun, and then they should be ready to install. So that's where I'm at tonight. I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow. It is the following night, and I have the brakes all finished. I've got the calipers mounted on the car, so they're all freshly painted. I read the instructions on this particular brand of paint. They did not suggest baking the paint on, so I just left well enough alone. I got, I think, one more coat on after I turned the camera off last night. And you can see here that we have the emergency brake cable tied in. We have the hydraulic line for the brakes tied in, and we have all of the hardware on the brake caliper tightened up. Now once I bolted this all together, I did find that the rotor was awfully close to the inside of the mounting bracket on this side. So I used a single washer right here in between the caliper mounting bracket and the axle bracket to just space it out a little bit, and that seems to have centered us in the opening for the rotor. So that's pretty good. We're going to go ahead and probably bleed the brakes in the next day or two. I'll probably have Mrs. IE427 come out here to the shop and give me a hand. But I think everything came out really nice. I did have to twist the feed line. So the brake line to the soft brake line to the caliper, I did have to twist it because it was looped this way. And so I loosened it up right here, just kind of turned it so that the loop in it would come in towards the center of the tire. Now I did reuse the banjo bolts right here. And I'm willing to take a chance because, one, they were aluminum, so they're a little bit softer than the copper ones, so they will conform. But they weren't that tight on the caliper to start with, meaning normally when I tighten these things, if you're holding the caliper in your hand and you try to pull the banjo bolt out, it's not coming out. I normally have to disconnect mine when they're mounted on the car so that I have leverage against it. And I was able to do that with just holding the caliper in my hand and loosening the banjo bolt. Now, these are the banjo bolts that came out of the calipers that were on the car, and they just happen to be the same thread size and pitch as the ones that we're using now. So I went ahead and reused all that stuff. I'll probably send the owner home with a new pair of banjo bolts with the calipers that we pulled off, just in case at some point if he decides to change out to 17-inch tires and wheels, he can up the size of the rear calipers again. But for now, everything works. But for right now, everything's bolted up to the car and we're ready to move on to the next step. So I think this is where I'm going to leave this one. This was kind of one of those things that it's an easy project. I mean, anybody can do this, and you can actually do this on the car. So if you don't want to disconnect your hydraulic lines to the calipers, you will have to disconnect the emergency brake cable. because it just makes it easier to move the calipers around as you're kind of cleaning them and getting them prepped. But you can see we prepped them really well. We've got at least a half a dozen coats of this high temperature caliper paint, and I believe it said it had ceramic in it, which I don't know what that means. Hopefully it means it'll withstand the temperatures better. But they came out really nice, and you know, they look very similar to the coloring on the calipers we have in the front of the car. So you can see the caliper through the hole in the wheel right there, and they're very similar in color. That's kind of what we were going for, because you know, I could have kept them blue. The blue didn't look bad. I could have just cleaned up the residue that was on them from when I stored them, and they would have worked just fine. But this way they all match, and I think the owner's going to like that. So here's the old caliper we took off right there. It's not really old, it's brand new, but that's the one we took off. There's the one we replaced it with, and you can see they look very similar when all is said and done. If you are enjoying the content here, as always, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.